Today we're sitting down on the porch with Mathilde, a QHS member whose life is as heartwarming as a home-cooked meal. What paths did she follow to get to where she is today? Let's take a stroll down memory lane and see what's been cooking behind the scenes.
My name is Mathilde. I am a soul consciousness in a body. I, the soul, have spent many lifetimes in the Pleiades, and before that, I believe I was on a planet or maybe in a dimension where there was no fear, no aggression, no hatred. But it's been, I think, about 5,000 years that I've been incarnating on planet Earth, and a beautiful planet it is. This current body of mine is 80 years old. My mother gave birth to it in 1943, 18 months before the war was over. And I slipped into it shortly after it was born. My present body is 100% German peasant stock. And I think all my forebears were Lutheran. I've done the genealogy of my family back to the late 1500s, believe it or not, yes. I found out there was a teacher and there was a pastor once, but mostly 99.9%. My forebears were peasants, farmers, who worked on the farm, raised farm animals, lived in small villages in northern Germany. I grew up in a small village with my grandparents, my father's parents, and 8 brothers and sisters, 4 older ones and 4 younger ones, 4 boys, and we were 5 girls. My father loved me unconditionally. He had been my teacher and my husband in several past lives. He was a farmer, even though he also had wanted to immigrate to America like his siblings did. But his father said he had to stay on the farm, and in those days, he was a good son and he stayed. He was very artistic and he was musical. He belonged to the men's choir in the village his entire life. My mother scared me with threats and hurt me with insults. She had been my sister in a past life, and I married the man that she had very much wanted, and she did not overcome her envy and took it out on me when I was a child. I attended the village school for 8 years, and I loved it there mainly because my mother wasn't there and couldn't hurt me there, and I felt safe. And I was also smart, and that made school fun for me also. True, the first 6 months I had no idea what the teacher was talking about because I was speaking Plattdeutsch, an ancient German language, and the teacher was speaking Hochdeutsch. But I learned quickly, and after 6 months, everything was okay. By the time I was 12 years old, my 3 older siblings had already left and immigrated to the States. When I was 16, I loved a young man who was 21. He asked me to marry him, and I said yes. But when he pushed for sex, I really wasn't ready, and I said no. And he left me. He got another girl pregnant, married her, had a baby. And the day after the baby was born, when he drove his motorcycle home, he hit a tree full force and he died. I was 17 He was 22. I had just arrived in New York, and his death started to search for answers. My Lutheran upbringing just hadn't prepared me for such a trauma. And I found my way pretty soon into esoteric knowledge. I was in a library and a book more or less fell off the shelf. And it was about Edgar Cayce and past lives. And everything rang true, what I read there. And I joined the ARE and became a member there and found friends in New York because there was a branch in New York. But I wanted to study esoteric knowledge systematically, and a friend pointed me at the Arcane School and Alice Bailey, who was the student of a Tibetan master. And so I meditated daily, regularly, studied, and served, found a way to serve. After years of meditating in my early 30s, I started having paranormal experiences. I had out-of-body experiences, saw my body from the outside, and knew then there is no dying. The soul cannot die, it does live forever. I had visions of past lifetimes. The major one was in Peru. I was chosen to be sacrificed and didn't want to. I didn't see it as an honor, which was supposed to be. I was furious. I wanted to live. And later I learned also that the Spanish Inquisition got me because I was a woman of the woods and worked with herbs. And they put a stake through my heart. Various other bits and pieces of past lifetimes. And I also developed a good intuition. Oh yes, and I had messages from the dead. It was fascinating, these otherworldly experiences. And at the ARE, I found others who also had such experience, but more, it made me weird. My friends didn't. I had normal friends and I had then these paranormal friends, but the paranormal friends, I didn't see that often. And my normal friends, I couldn't talk to them about these things. They considered it weird. And I was an outsider a lot of the time and I often made the mistake and talked and then regretted it later. In New York, however, New York City, where I lived for 35 years, so often it wasn't all that bad. So I had come to the States at the age of 17 with an 8th grade education and no training for a job. So I worked 3 years for my sister and then for my brother. And then I got a job in an office and I worked myself up to private secretary. And that is possible in the States. It would not be possible in Germany, where you need a piece of paper for everything. So I worked myself up to private secretary. And then I went to college. And that was a dream come true. Yes, that's proper English. Okay, then I got a job at NYU and I studied there. Couldn't have afforded it otherwise. It's very expensive. And I had an episode of tachycardia, which I had had since I was 13. Periodically, not regularly. Sometimes every couple of weeks, sometimes months would go by. And when I lay down, especially a good night's sleep, the next morning it would be gone and I'd be normal again. But this time, my wonderful professor didn't let me go home, but sent me to the NYU clinic. And that was very good because finally I got a proper diagnosis. PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. In my AV node and my heart were extra electrical cells, which caused a second heartbeat. So instead of 80, 90 times a minute, my heart beat twice as fast as it was supposed to. So from then on, for several years, I took medication, but it did not solve the problem. From my esoteric studies, especially from Edgar Cayce, I knew that everything can be healed. And so I wanted to heal my heart condition. The first step was to find out what caused it. And so I incubated dreams, learned of a lifetime in which I had been very, very afraid. And the Spanish Inquisition thing with the stake through the heart had impacted not only my body, but my soul memory. And I asked 2 clairvoyants and got the same answer. It was fear. Fear of mainly human violence and human aggression. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't handle it. I didn't have any in me. So I learned, I studied, I experimented. And healing it involved 5 years of psychotherapy. I had therapy with Dr. Albert Ellis in rational emotive therapy, which did wonders for me. And then I was at the Daniel Castle Institute, where therapy was emotional release. And I had stuffed my emotions. Oh, wow, had I stuffed my emotions. So here I had a chance to release the fear and the pain. And eventually I also got to my anger. We need anger to protect ourselves. And this psychotherapy changed my life. It changed my thinking. It gave me a lot of courage to go forward. And I learned that most of our feelings are caused by our thoughts. And our feelings cause many of our illnesses. And repressing feelings is a really, really bad idea. When I was 42 years old, I got my bachelor's from NYU. And 8 years later, I got my master's in communication from Hunter College. And a year after that, my book was published by the ARE about my paranormal experiences and about healing the relationship with my mother. By now, I was working at the UN, a 12-minute walk from my apartment. Through a colleague there, I found a new cardiologist who suggested an ablation procedure to stop the PSVT. I agreed. It was done in 1997. I haven't had an episode since, but I wore a pacemaker for 11 years, which I really did not need, but the doctors were overcautious, installed it, and I had it taken out again. My healer clairvoyant asked me if I had episodes of tachycardia since the ablation, and I said no. And she said then I had healed the underlying condition, the fears that had caused them. And that made me very happy, and I felt really successful about that. When the mouse for the computer first came out, I apparently overused it. And I got not only carpal tunnel syndrome in both hands, I got tendinitis in both thumbs, and it was very, very painful. Doctors told me that without surgery, my thumbs would never be straight again. But I turned to Edgar Cayce remedies, castor oil, and salt and vinegar packs. And 3 months later, the pain was totally gone, and my thumbs were straight again. Then I had frozen shoulder, and that is also very, very painful. 10 treatments of physiotherapy at the hospital did not improve it, and so I went to a healer. At the third visit, he used sound from his vocal cords, directing it at my shoulder. And it connected. And I immediately felt healing taking place. After 3 more treatments, it was practically gone. And then it left completely, and the mobility was back. Next, a few weeks before a planned 8-mile hike on the Inca Trail in Peru with the Sierra Club through the Andean Mountains into Machu Picchu, I had pain in my knee. And I had, a little nightmare. What happens if they have to take me out by helicopter? That's not going to be what I want. So I used castor oil packs again, heat, and laid on my own hands for healing and channeled the Christ energy. The pain stopped and did not recur for over 10 years. After Peru, I traveled to 20 more countries outside the US, and visited 10 US states, including Florida, California, Hawaii, and Alaska. I got engaged 2 more times, but it did not end in marriage. I wanted to get married like my siblings, but my soul apparently had other ideas, and it just did not end in marriage. Now, when the subject of marriage comes up, I just say I forgot to get married, and that always gets a good laugh. I retired in 2009, and the ceiling fell on my head in my tiny apartment in New York City, and I returned to Germany to help my younger brother with his school-age children, because he had lost his job after 20 years, and then his wife left him. And so I helped him in the house and household and children, but the relationship with my brother, unfortunately, turned out very badly. We did just not see eye to eye. And so I got an apartment in a town not far away, and moved there, sharing this house with a woman my age. When my brothers started working the night shift, the children lived with me for several years, yes. Their school was very close by. They could actually walk from my apartment to their school, and I did everything for them that a mother does. The woman in the other apartment in the house gave me even more stress than my brother, and I learned that both were narcissists, and I had no experience with this character or personality type. Fortunately, I found really good YouTube programs where there was teaching, there was help, and I learned that I needed to learn to set my boundaries, which I really had not effectively done. And I learned to set my boundaries. It's quite a job to do that. And I learned that I have to rely more on myself and not be codependent. And I learned to raise my self-esteem a little higher. I believe I pretty much succeeded in that. However, the stress took its toll, and in 2015 I had a blocked artery to my heart and a stent was put in. In 2022, I had shortness of breath and a dry cough, and I was diagnosed with a raised diaphragm, which pushes the lung up and you cannot fill your lung, and I had restricted bronchi. Climbing stairs was really painful, and when I biked, I was soon out of breath. I got medication for that, but also in March 22, I got the black device, and I must say it performed miracles. And most importantly, it restored my breathing. And I can bike, 40, 50 kilometers a day if I choose. I average 2,500 to 3,000 kilometers a year, and I bike even in winter. My knee pain was eventually diagnosed as arthritis, and I did some more healing on it, and I'm sure the black device also helped. The black device also healed the chronic pain in my left shoulder, which would really, really hurt me after biking for a while. That is completely gone. In less than a month, I'll be 81 years old. I love to bike. Naturally, I have an e-bike. And the bike paths here in northern Germany are simply super. Biking through the woods, biking through fields, biking through meadows, along the canal, around lakes. It is fantastic. I could only dream of that when I lived in New York City. When I bike in the spring, I see wild herbs and I collect them and can use them throughout the year. In the fall, I collect fruits and berries and collect them, make all sorts of things, but mostly I freeze them for smoothies. And over my morning breakfast. When I'm home, I play with my 2 Siamese cats, knit mainly socks, and I have a whole drawer full of socks. I translate articles and videos from exopolitics. I translate articles and videos on exopolitics into German for friends who don't speak English. I attend coffee clutches for seniors, play afternoons where we play table games, card games, and I read them stories and tell them jokes. And I have 3 students of English, 1 adult, and a brother and sister who are 10 and 12 years old. I came to quantum healing systems through Alex Collier, and I am forever grateful. I want my heart and bronchi to be healed completely, and I want a 3rd set of natural teeth. I want my body's ability to heal quickly restored, as it took a really long time to heal recently when I foolishly climbed through a barbed wire fence to collect wild fruit on a meadow, and I ripped my ankle open. I want to travel to New Zealand and Australia and Jupiter. And I mean Jupiter not only in Florida, where my favorite sister lives, but I mean Jupiter the planet. I know, of course, that QHS cannot do that, but when we use the QArc, when we can use the QArc, I believe we will also have the technology to travel to Jupiter. I know that God's will for me and for everyone is perfect happiness, and I want that.
Join us on the Prequel, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Because here at QHS, we're all about healing, learning, and growing together.